and welcome to Freedom Fighters Code Gray. This is a show where we discuss human trafficking, an issue that's happening in our own backyard. Some of the content in today's show may be triggering, as we will be discussing topics related to trauma and exploitation. If you're looking for information and support as it relates to human trafficking, you can call the Canadian Human Trafficking Hotline 24/7 at 1-833-900-1010. How can youth be a part of the solution to ending human trafficking? And what are some of the amazing initiatives that are being led by youth to prevent trafficking from happening in the first place? Well, today I'm joined by Eli, the educational consultant, and Ali, the youth empowerment coordinator at OneChild, who will be discussing this topic. Welcome to you both. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, thank you for having us.
So how did you both get involved in anti-trafficking work? What did your journey kind of look like to be here talking to me today?
Yeah, so for me, I read an article on human trafficking in my rural area. To me, it stood out because I thought it was more of an uncommon international or big city problem, or really only something you see in film. Movies about human trafficking aren't exactly popular, but even then, that is probably where I'd seen it the most. And the depiction of human trafficking in television is often wrong. So when I read about it, it was most jarring because it isn't even thinking, oh, this doesn't happen. It's realizing you don't even really know what it actually is. I was finding out this was a problem, but I couldn't even begin to describe what exactly it was. So it's one thing to learn you have to worry about wildfires in your area, but at least you know what a wildfire is because you hear about them all the time. Human trafficking is a wildfire you don't hear about. So naturally, I wanted to learn about what it is. And at the time, I was part of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals program. There are 17 goals, from ending poverty to reducing inequalities to climate action to clean water and sanitation. My initiative aligned with Goal 5, 8, 10, and 16, which are gender equality, decent work and economic growth, reduce inequality, and peace, justice, and strong institutions. So things sort of fell into place timing-wise, where I was in a position where I could develop an initiative to combat this issue. From there, I created the Hidden World Project to spread awareness and educate people on human trafficking. That was a couple of years ago. I started developing the project in 2020 and launched it in 2021. That led me to the Youth Advisory Squad, or YES program, with OneChild, which is an educational and empowerment program. OneChild is an organization that empowers youth to fight against the sexual exploitation of children and child sex trafficking. I'm currently working with them as an educational consultant, as you said, and in doing so, I'm fighting against a part of this issue that impacts me directly as a young person.
Wow, Eli, thank you so much for just taking the time to just share how, from hearing about the issue and realizing, what's actually happening in our community, and then finding different steps and ways to get involved in initiatives that you have taken. It's really inspiring. Ali, how about you?
Yeah, so my kind of journey to advocacy, it didn't necessarily start in the child sex trafficking ring. So back when I was in high school, a lot of issues in terms of understanding our own power and privilege was starting to become a very prominent topic as, we got older, as we matured and understood ourselves a little bit more. And at the time, I really wanted to reflect on myself and understand where I could use my privileges, I can use my power, my opportunities, and to see that, hey, I have something in me where I can assist others, or I can empower others, or I can help others in any way, and use that to my capabilities to assist those. So throughout my journey in high school, I worked and started many other organizations with World Vision, other nonprofits, where we had the opportunity to see, the impact that we are putting and how it's affecting those positively and also negatively. So as time went on, and as I entered my journey through university, I came across Cheryl Pereira, the founder of OneChild, and we had a nice conversation back way when. And from there, it was history. I started to understand the real issues of child sex trafficking in Canada. It's always known as something that happens to third world countries or cities and areas where it's not as, privileged. But the reality is that it happens anywhere and everywhere we see. We just kind of have to open our eyes and understand that it's there. So once I was able to understand my privilege, I, didn't want to back down. I wanted to help as much as I could, where I could. And, from there it was history. And now we work with so many different students and educational groups and other organizations to educate and promote this as much as we can.
Well, thank you both for, you know, not only listening and hearing and learning about this issue once it came to your attention, but then taking steps of action to determine how can you help prevent this from happening, but also how can you empower and equip other people to be a part of the solution. So along those same lines, like what role do you think that youth can play in prevention education?
I think that we play a primary role. I mean, we're who the education is for in the first place. The average recruitment age into human trafficking is 13. So if education is to be preventative, you have to be teaching people who are even younger than that and continue such education throughout our teen years. The only way to know what youth know, how you think, how youth feel, and how to best get the message across is to simply ask us. I also think it sends a very powerful message to traffickers that we are fighting back. We are becoming aware of this issue, and we aren't as vulnerable as you think we are. These people target children since we are vulnerable, partially because we are often kept in the dark about these topics, and even adults don't really know about the issue. Furthermore, certain children, like Indigenous girls, are impacted disproportionately because they're already at a disadvantage living in a system that wasn't built for them. And the only people who can speak on that experience are Indigenous women and girls who have that lived experience. So youth play the role of both the educated and the experts and the educators.
Ali, do you have anything else that you would like to add or share?
Yeah, I think Eli really hit the mark on that one. I think the important thing for us to understand is that child sex trafficking, as Eli mentioned, the average age of entry is 13 years old. So at the end of the day, the youth, as Eli said amazingly, they are the educators, they're the experts, and they're the educated, right? So if the topic is revolving the youth must play an important role as they are on every side of the game. So if they are not involved or if they're not, in the conversation, we're kind of doing ourselves a dishonest. And, as we band together, young, old, whatever generation it may be, it creates a really powerful message to those on the opposing side that we're not here to back down. We're here to fight. We're here to stand together.
And something that, just kind of resonates with me as you're both sharing, as this issue impacts different people in different ways. So you need the individuals who, are impacted by this crime, whether it's the youth, whether it's people in Indigenous communities, to be able to speak from their own lived experience into the issue of how can we best address it. So I really appreciate that you have brought that forward, that we need to be not only consulting with and seeking input from communities, but really it being led and driven by the various individuals and actors in society who are being most impacted by the crime. And so, you're talking about youth being involved in this issue and helping prevent it. And that's really pivotal because youth are being targeted. So how have you seen the prevention education efforts that are being led by youth make a meaningful and effective impact in society?
Yeah, so to be brutally honest with you, Michaela, I've seen youth lead more successful conversations that kids walk out of feeling motivated to make change because they didn't tune out, because they felt the presenter, was out of touch or something. No other generation aside from the generation after Gen Z, which feels odd for me to say, has grown up with technology in the way that we have. Technology comes with a world of issues that contribute to this cause, from explicit material to social media platforms, child sexual abuse material. The approach with how we handle this is better received when you hear the messaging from someone who has been or is in your position. It doesn't help to hear from someone older telling you not to do XYZ, knowing very well if they had a phone at your age, they probably would be doing the same things. I think youth have devised an effective way of leading this conversation that focuses less on what not to do and rather on what you can do, making other children feel as though they are being represented and talked to, not necessarily talked at. This issue is evolving and will evolve to the point where my understanding becomes less relevant because I don't understand youth experiences anymore. I've noticed with some prevention education led by adults that is addressing issues they faced. Take bullying, for example. It looks totally different now, and adults have adjusted to combat that. But when I was younger, the anti-bullying assemblies didn't address what the current issue was and what bullying looked like at that time. Looking back on it now, I realize that's because when my parents went to school, kids were getting physically assaulted in a way that they aren't necessarily now when it comes to bullying. So because the issue itself changes, the way it presents changes based on current attitudes, behaviors, hobbies, and overall lifestyles of youth. So you need to have youth leading these conversations. Otherwise, you're addressing like an outdated version of the problem. And youth also make a great impact with older generations as well, because you can tell adults like that you're fighting for this cause, and most of the time you have their immediate attention. At least in my experience, that's what I've noticed.
Eli, that's so insightful. I mean, a point that you're addressing here is that how our societal and cultural norms continue to shift, right? And they can shift quickly, and each generation experiences those norms, if you will, differently, and there can be a disconnect, especially when it comes to something as big as technology. And we know that trafficking is one of the fastest growing crimes in the entire world, so it is constantly evolving and changing. And so really seeking the input of youth who are at the forefront of understanding how these things are interplaying in terms of technology and boundaries, and just even how that's influencing their peers around them is so key. And so what is the greatest challenge that you think that youth face when fighting this issue?
I think one of the greatest challenges youth face when fighting this issue is having the opportunity to talk about it in youth spaces. I'm friends with a number of young advocates against exploitation, and they have consistently run into issues with school administration, parents, when they want to campaign, educate, or spread awareness in school communities. It is actually easier to get an audience of adults, which is interesting, because it tells you that adults believe youth can tackle these causes, but at the same time, they worry about it, like it will be too much for children to hear it. There are also a number of societal attitudes conveyed to youth that fuel this issue. First and foremost, the attitude that this issue is far from home and far from reality. I've had conversations where people flatly reject the notion that this is a problem because they just can't wrap their head around it. This is because as a society, we've normalized the sexualization of children to a degree. In media and film, you have adults playing teenagers. I've talked with this time and time again. They're engaging in sexual activity from a young age. You have the bad boy, good girl trope, beauty pageants that train you to hate your body or have it on display. You also have the manosphere, which is a collection of web content, including podcasts, blogs, and websites that oppose feminism and promote a toxic form of masculinity. I think this is an example of a very unique issue that is seen throughout a number of social causes, where the opposition weaponizes language by turning positive terms into negative ones by redefining them or saying they stand for something they believing that they do when they end up perpetuating the issue. So feminism is, and I quote, the belief in social, economic, and political equality of the sexes. This has been flipped into the idea that feminism is exclusively for women, or that feminists think women should have more than men, or that feminism is anti-men because it's anti-patriarchy, which also negatively impacts men. The feminist movement was started by women for women because they were not and are still not on an equal playing field as men. It has evolved into this modern advocacy group for all genders, including men. True feminists recognizes challenges unique to men, such as mental health struggles. And that's another challenge. You're opposing a group of people that not only like to redefine your argument, they claim to be and truly think they're supporting a cause when really they are making the issue worse. These people will tell you how to be a man and say men are more likely to struggle with depression in the same sentence. So when fighting this issue, you also have to fight for all of these other causes. If you're an advocate against sexual exploitation, you're also an advocate for racialized communities. You're also a feminist activist. You're also an advocate for children's rights, and you're often fighting against people who are difficult to reason with.
Eli, you have touched on so many macro and micro systemic issues that are, really fueling trafficking and exploitation and how it's impacting youth. And you have said it so eloquently, and you've touched on so many big topics that I can't wait to dive into more. But we are going to take a short break, and then we will be right back to have this discussion with Eli and Ali about what is the role that youth play in prevention education, and what are youth doing to inspire change as it relates to trafficking? So we'll be right back after we take a short break. Hi, Hi, and welcome back to Freedom Fighters Code Gray. This is a show where we discuss the issue of human trafficking. And today I am joined by Eli and Ali, who are discussing the role that youth can play in prevention education. And right before the break, we were just having a really great chat about some of the challenges that youth are facing when it relates to this issue, and specifically some of the societal attitudes and messages that are being conveyed to youth that are really fueling this problem. And so I just want to turn it back over to you, Eli and Ali, to say, is there anything that you just kind of want to touch on or add as it relates to that conversation we were having?
Yeah, of course. I think one topic that Eli really touched upon, which I thought was phenomenal, is the societal attitudes that youth are kind of facing when tackling any topic that it may be. So when I was, entering the game of advocacy and understanding, issues that we have, systemic or whatever it may be, I encountered a lot of pressure from, my parents or the older generation saying that, oh, we're not educated enough, or we may not have enough experience, or whatever it may be. So having that kind of, thought in the back of my head or anything of those sorts kind of added a little, a little pressure when trying to educate myself, kind of some doubts to see if that, is this something I should get my hands wet in, or am I tangled in a web that I can't get out of, whatever it may be. So despite having those, I was resilient, thankfully, because I had a great group of friends and we all had the same headspace and mindsets, and we persevered through it. But I feel like those issues are still, unfortunately, prevalent today. We're still working on it, and I think we're doing a phenomenal job on it, but it's still there, of course. So those are some issues that I feel like that may be hitting the youth a little bit, but I'm sure with the right education, the right attitude, and the right mindset, we can always persevere anything through it.
Well, we've talked about, the issues that we see happening. And so what ideas do you both have to prevent exploitation? And just even further than that, what are your ideas to inspire youth to be part of addressing, be part of, earlier we were talking about, the rudder of really determining how youth are being educated on this topic. So what are your ideas to inspire youth to get involved?
Yeah, so to me, social media seems to be the right direction to go in right now, especially making educational, empowering, and engaging videos. I did some research on this actually, and videos do better than still images. I think it's because it feels more real, and you have to look into the eyes of a child talking to you about exploitation, especially as a young person, because you're looking at living proof that you can be part of the solution. Sometimes organizations also don't do the best job at getting vocabulary or the delivery correct. So that's where youth come in, since they know the terminology and how to get the message across. I can't really take credit for that idea though, since that comes from OneChild, that's really what they do. A solution I have is to target caregivers specifically, because they can work with or against you, even if they have the best of intentions. I think we need to be talking to parents and guardians more in order to inspire them to feel comfortable with educating their children about this issue, or really having their children be educated. At OneChild this summer, we started talking about campaigns children can do. And I was trying to think of how best to market this to adults so our ideas don't get shut down by both concerned caretakers and school administration. I don't want to be designing a campaign to ensure parents' comfort, because it's not a comfortable topic, but it is a necessary one. And it's so much better to be uncomfortable and sad hearing about this than to be uncomfortable and sad living it as a child. And parents actively influence the education system as voters, as our politicians, and just quite simply as parents raising concerns with schools. So my solution is youth educating adults to not only prove we can handle this conversation, but to express how necessary it is. There's a lot of red tape when it comes to addressing this issue, but we need to. And I think a lot of that, comes from parents, the red tape that is. But by talking to parents and guardians, young people would also be inspired to combat exploitation, because they will see the roles reversed, where youth are the ones taking charge to talk to adults. And that isn't something you see every day.
Something you shared, Eli, just was many of the things that you're sharing are so deep and helpful and insightful. But one thing just really struck a chord with me. And it was, it's one thing being uncomfortable and sad and hearing about it, and then uncomfortable and sad and living it. And I think that is a hard truth, but an important truth that needs to be relayed to caregivers, administration, adults, because as we know, this issue is growing. It's impacting youth at exponential rates through online systems, through even peer-to-peer situations. And so really helping people understand that more and more people are unfortunately and tragically living it. So we need to, even though it is uncomfortable and it is tragic hearing about it, we want to prevent people from actually experiencing the horrors of exploitation. Now, you both, just even in your intro and sharing, like, it's so clear that you have so much knowledge as it relates to this topic. And so I'm so curious to know, what are some of the projects and initiatives that you have worked on in the past that you would like to talk about? Or maybe what are some of the things that you are working on in the future?
Yeah, so I've worked on a couple different initiatives. The first being the Hit and World Project, where I spoke with community members, people assigned my community, business groups, and my municipality about this issue. This was an awareness-based initiative that I would actually be interested in bringing back to life a little bit when I go to school. In a week and a half, I was going to say longer than that, but it's really sneaking up on me. It's been a couple of years, though, since I've done that initiative, and I've learned so much more about this issue through other campaigns, initiatives, and presentations. So I'd really like to bring this back with this greater understanding. I would really like to address this issue and the specific circumstances that university students face, especially first-year students. Since 2011, the most targeted age group by traffickers has been 8 to 24-year-olds, making up around 45% of reported cases. What are a lot of people doing like that or that age? They're going to school or attending post-secondary nowadays. And when you're in your first year, you're separated from your supports. Even if you're living off campus and at home, that doesn't mean all your friends are going to the same school. You are possibly even in an entirely unfamiliar location, and you quite likely have limited relationship experience. That is what makes this group so vulnerable. So I not only want to educate people on this topic at school through posters, campaigning, and presentations, but I also want to focus on developing healthy relationships, whether platonic or romantic. To me, I see this as a key component of prevention because not always, but most often, victims know their traffickers. They're someone they thought they had a healthy, genuine bond with. So in addition to revamping the Hit and World Project, I'd love to start an on-campus initiative consisting of, power, red flags, green flags, manipulation, and anything relevant I can think of to relationships. I also think this is an easier way to get people interested in talking about sexual exploitation and trafficking because you're addressing the issue in a more subtle way. You aren't asking someone to attend a safety and trafficking friendship workshop, even though you actually are. You're just asking them to participate in a healthy relationship activity. As part of the ASK program, I did a capstone project where I spoke with Our Voices, which is a club at my school, which is essentially an equity club. I also did the hashtag Behind the Screens campaign in collaboration with Meta. So that's kind of a collection of what I've done and what I'm looking forward to doing in the future.
Wow, you have been involved in so many incredible projects, and I'm really excited to hear more and see more about the on-campus project, just from different research that I've read too, and being on campus myself, and just seeing like there is such a need for education and awareness to happen in that space. And you highlighted, right, that age group is really being targeted 18 to 24. We know there's huge, financial vulnerabilities, as well as the social isolation that you mentioned with the cost of education. So just thank you for all the great work that you've done, and I can't wait to see what you continue to do. Ali, how about you? What are some of the projects that you've done in the past, or what are you looking forward to in your work with OneChild?
I think one of the greatest initiatives that OneChild works on is our Break the Chains presentations that we do with schools all across Ontario. So it's an opportunity for me or anyone of OneChild who's the speakers to go around and give a 1-hour presentations where we really dive deep into what is child sex trafficking and how it affects us and how we can empower ourselves to be educators, advocates, or anything of those sorts. So we go into topics such as rights related to the UN conventions on the rights of a child, what constitutes child sex trafficking, the scale and scope that happens not just in Ontario, but even Toronto in itself, recruitment and tactics by perpetrators. We go into vulnerable demographics and sex of those sorts, harmful stereotypes, norms, attitudes, root causes, gender equality, and boys can be victims as well too. So we go over a whole bunch of topics in a very compact 1 hour, but it's something that we really pride ourselves for, and we feel like it does make quite the impact. Another initiative that we actually undertook this year is our Flip the Script short film that's currently undergoing, where it's an opportunity for us to, show the public that the issue of child sex trafficking, it's, both on the child to be an educator as well as the parent. Because as we mentioned before, back and forth, where we're saying that, some individuals might not have an open-mindedness to it to understand and, really look into the issue. So this film is an opportunity for us to show parents that children of all sorts, no matter the demographic or what it may be, right, they are a part of this because it's a community issue. So you as a parent, you have an opportunity to take action yourself, to educate yourself, educate your children or your loved ones or your friends to understand this issue and know how to be an educator and a preventer.
I really loved the just tiered or differing approach, if you will, in terms of ensuring that the education is being presented and provided to both youth through youth, but then also ensuring that caregivers are provided with the tools that they need to be able to engage in these conversations, as also being people who can be educators and preventers. That's really fantastic. With the remaining time we have left in the show, I'm just wondering if either of you would like to share what do you think is really important for viewers who are tuning into our conversation to know about this topic?
Yeah, I'm going to keep it short and sweet. I think it's important for viewers not only to know that this is a pervasive issue, but understand what that actually means. Take a moment to sit with that, to digest it. It is so easy at in this time to become desensitized to these causes because the news is filled with horror stories. It is easy to take out your phone, distract yourself, to literally scroll past an issue. It is so easy to pretend this isn't happening if it isn't your loved ones, if it isn't you. But it could be, it really could be. No matter how well you think you understand the issue, no matter how secure you think you are, it really could be you. It could be someone you love. And I need people seeing this to fully grasp that it's not beyond you and you're not separate from the issue.
Well, thank you both so much, so much for taking the time to share today about the importance of engaging youth in the fight against human trafficking. If you are viewing the show today and you are in immediate danger and it's safe to do so, please call 911. If you're looking for information and support related to human trafficking, you can call the Human Trafficking Hotline 24/7 at 1-833-900-1010. Again, that's 1-833-900-1010. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope to catch you next time on our conversation on Freedom Fighters Code Gray.